Hello, learner. Welcome to Mr. Quaker's Teaches. In this lesson, I'll be analyzing Stevie Smith's poem, Away Melancholy. I'll speak about the themes, the figures of speech, the point of view, the poet's tone, the mood, the structure as well of the poem, and other stylistic devices that Smith uses to strikingly present her dislike or disdain for the personified melancholy. You're going to observe in the poem that she uses multiple repetitions, asking the melancholy to move physically away from her. So it's something that you should pay particular attention to. Let's dive into the analysis. Now, let me begin by speaking about the poet Smith, Stevie Smith. Her full name actually is Florence Margaret Smith. She's known as Stevie Smith. She was born on the 20th of September 1902, and then she died on the 7th of March 1971. She was an English poet and novelist. She won the Mondeli Award and was awarded the Queen's Gold Medal for poetry. So she's quite an accomplished poet. So this is like a short, brief note or history on the poet. Now, the poem itself is a rather long poem. It's one of the lengthier poems in the anthology. In fact, the poem has about 10 stanzas. So, and it's about 48 line long. So it's spread here over 3 slides. It's one of the lengthier poems, so please pay attention, make notes. And the poem has like this topsy-turvy move to it, as Smith argues for the virtues that man possesses, what's happening in the world, and the different ways that human beings can exercise or dismiss melancholy or make it move away from them. So you're going to see that there are shifts in the focus of each. Most of the stanzas, and I'll explain why she does that, in detail. Now, let me begin the analysis in earnest by first reading the poem. Away Melancholy by Stevie Smith. Away melancholy, away with it, let it go. Are not the trees green, the earth as green? Does not the wind blow, fire lip, and the rivers flow? Away melancholy. The ant is busy, he carried his meat, all things hurry to be eaten or eat. Away melancholy. Man too hurries, eats, couples, berries. He's an animal also, with a he who melancholy. Away with it, let it go. Man of all creatures is superlative. Away melancholy. He of all creatures alone raiseth a stone. Away melancholy. Into the stone the God pours what he knows of good, calling good God. Away melancholy, let it go. Speak not to me of tears, tyranny, pox, wars, saying, can God, stone of man's thought, be good? Say rather it is enough that the stuffed stone of man's good, growing by man's called God. Away melancholy, let it go. Man aspires to good, to love, sighs. Beaten, corrupted, dying, in his own bloodline, yet heaves up an eye above, cries, love, love. It is his virtue needs explaining, not his failings. Away melancholy, away with it, let it go. So that essentially is a reading of the poem. Like I mentioned, the poem has about 10 stanzas. Now, one of the first things we should observe is that the poetic voice opens the poem quite dramatically, right? With what comes across as a commanding, or what can be described with the synonym of commanding with an imperative tone. She rebukes the personified melancholy and expels it. In fact, we see that in the title when she says away melancholy. So she wants the personified melancholy to move physically away from her. Now, her tone, the poetic voice's tone of command, is seen in the first word, away. Now, that's a verb. It communicates her irritation, highlights her imperative tone, and shows that she wants the personified melancholy to change location. That is, immediately move far away from her. So that's the command that we see first. away. It's like, move away from me, stay away from me. I mean, in the modern rendition. Now, also, her use of the single word away shows that she wants to make her dislike for its presence and actions, to be known. She also wants it to be as easy as possible. So it's not something that is ambiguous. So we see the use of an unambiguous term. So the word away there is simple. She could have used maybe I dismiss you or something like that. But she says away there to use unambiguous term to show that she wants everyone that hears her, they will not second guess what she's saying to the personified, melancholy. And the personified melancholy itself will not second guess what she's trying to say. That's why she uses the unambiguous or simple word away. So she doesn't want to be second guessed, and also she doesn't want to use an ambiguous terminology. Now, furthermore, although a comma only indicates a fleeting pause, she employs it after the word away. So we see that in the first line of the first stanza, where she says away. And now that away there the comma there creates a short pause, or what can be described as a caesura, before mentioning melancholy, which is the umbrella term for apathy, sadness, depression, the rest. So we see here that the poetic voice wants the personified melancholy, which can be manifested in multiple ways, to move physically away from her. She does this to show that there are multiple manifestations of melancholy, but all of these manifestations, she wants it to move clear away from her. Now, finally, the expression away melancholy also conveys to the reader that she is verbally and strongly dismissing the personified melancholy. That's what the poetic voice is doing. She is strongly and verbally dismissing the personified melancholy. Now, in the second line of the stanza, she again repeats away before adding with it. Now, her repetition of away a second time as the first word in the succeeding line qualifies the word as an anaphora. So we observe here that the word away is an anaphora, because it's the first word of the first line of the first stanza, and also the first word of the second line of the first stanza. So we see here that's an anaphora. Now, she uses the anaphora to emphasize her unerring desire. It is not something that she's willing to change, her unerring desire to have the personified melancholy move away from her. Away also emphasizes that she wants melancholy to cease its activities and physically move away from her. So we see here that this refrain, away, appears multiple times in the poem. Now, additionally, her repetition of away a second time emphasizes her deep hatred for the personified melancholy. She hates it and its actions, and her desire to have it physically move away from her, while let it go, which is the last three words of the line, literally suggests that she wants melancholy to unhand what is holding on to. So let it go, whatever it is, in the literal sense, she wants it to unhand. If it's holding on to something, she wants it to unhand what it is holding. Now, figuratively, however, let it go communicates that the personified melancholy is bringing up issues, right? It is bringing up issues that she wants to forget or does not want to talk about. Presumably, her negative experiences or what's happening, the negative things that are happening in the world. So her demand that it let it go is a way of making it clear to it that she wants it to cease and desist from taking the actions that it is taking. So maybe it's saying, whispering all sorts of, nasties to her about maybe things that are not right in her life or things that are not right in the world. She's saying, let it go. Don't bring it up anymore. Now, furthermore, there's always a sense that she's speaking to herself and by extension the reader that they let melancholy go. I mean, that's sort of like an off explanation, but that's also a possibility as well. Now, in the second stanza of the poem, she broadens the focus of the poem. Remember, I said that in my introductory portion that the multiple stanzas in the poem deals with different things. Now, in the second stanza, she broadens the focus of the poem by asking a string of very obvious rhetorical questions. And she presents these rhetorical questions in two sentences. Now, in her questions, she highlights all the four main elements of the world: air, earth, fire, and water. Now, she mentions earth and fire directly, so we see that in the earth is in the second line of the second stanza, fire is in the fourth line of the second stanza. But then when it comes to air, she refers to it as wind, and water she talks about rivers. So here she alludes to all four elements of nature. She asks a first rhetorical question with enjambment. So observe the flow of words from the first line to the second. Now, this is useful because it shows that there are two questions in one. So, are not the trees green, the earth as green? So she does this to show that when it comes to nature, all the elements of nature or the different portions of nature are linked together. So all the aspects of nature are linked together. Now, her first question, are not the trees green, the earth as green? Now, in the first part of the question, are not the trees green, is striking because of the very obvious nature of the question. The question is very obvious. The answer to the question is very obvious. I mean, if you ask a child, are not the trees green? They'll say, yeah, the trees are green. Right? Now, also, the answer to a question is in the affirmative yes. I mean, we see that already, the obvious nature of the answer. Of course, they are green. Now, although this may seem irrelevant to the reader, it is important because that's the poetic voice, wants to show that even with obvious manifestations of nature, we can expel melancholy in all of its form. So if people are in tune with nature, they make friends with it. Nature, it's a potent force to expel melancholy. Now, additionally, her mention of trees, a symbol of nature, and her description of them as green highlights that vitality, rejuvenation, renewal, etc. are all around. So it's all around her and the reader. And there are bountiful amounts of it in nature. So if you want to, expel melancholy, one of the things that the poetic voice wants us to know is that she's pointing to nature and saying that, see, the trees are green, the earth is as green as well. Now, in other words, she wants the reader to look to the vitality of nature and interaction with it as a way to overcome or expel melancholy. Now, the poetic voice completes a question in the second half of the sentence with the earth as green. So we see that in the second line, of the second stanza, which falls in the second line of the stanza. The earth here is an allusion to the entire world and the soil. So that's what she means, like the entire world and the soil. Her words also show that she is questioningly, with like a question, questioningly demanding that the reader open their eyes to the vitality that is expressed by green trees that can be found the world over, in most parts of the world, and look to it as a potent antidote for melancholy. Now, simply put, she wants the reader to realize that the cure for melancholy is everywhere and is freely available to all. They only need to look out to see it. So there are green trees, the earth is also green as well. Then she uses the simile as green to provide vivid visual imagery of the unquantifiable lushness of plants and the rich vitality that can be found on earth. So here we see the use of simile here. Now, furthermore, a repetition of green. So observe that the word green is repeated as the last word in the first line of stanza 2. So the first and second lines, green is the last word. So this again emphasizes that greenery, especially its manifestation in nature, is considered and known the world over as a very potent remedy for depression, fear, nervousness, etc. People who have problems sometimes are told to interact more with nature. Because when you interact with nature, it has the power, it has the power to exorcise melancholy. So that's why she refers to the trees and the earth there in lines 1 and line 2 of the second stanza. Now, in the third line of the stanza, the poetic voice asks the second rhetorical question. And remember, I said that there are two rhetorical questions, but then the way she breaks them down, it appears that she's asking multiple, but then there are two, rhetorical questions. Now, the second rhetorical question, does not the wind blow? Now, like the previous rhetorical question, this too has an affirmative answer. Yes, the wind blows. Yes, it blows. We know that it blows. Now, although the blowing of the wind is something that most people do not pay attention to or find interesting, Smith's words show that she wants the reader to pay attention to it because it is the wind, right, that causes the weather and the seasons to change. So the wind is also a useful element in nature. Now, the latter of which helps migratory birds to travel long distances across continents. So the wind is also a useful portion of nature, air. And that's also what we breathe in and breathe out. That's what allows us to be alive in the world. Now, the blowing of the wind also causes the transportation of seeds that are pollinated as well. So, I mean, it's extremely useful. Finally, the blowing wind also causes very basic things like the movement of air that refreshes humans on hot days. So we see here that she's talking about the multiple usefulness of what we would consider very obvious manifestations of nature that we do not even pay particular attention to. Simply, she asks the rhetorical questions about the wind to turn the reader's attention to the fact that even a common action like observing the wind blow can help push back melancholy. So there are multiple agents. I mean, in the second stanza, she's just dealing with, the reason why people can overcome melancholy is because of nature. Look to nature for inspiration on how to deal with melancholy. Now, the poetic voice flows into the fourth line of the stanza with enjambment, before asking rhetorically, fire lip and the rivers flow. Now, observe this. Observe that she says fire lip. Now, the use of the word lip there to describe how the fire behaves personifies it. That's personification because it's a verb. Now, this personification is useful because it creates the impression that the fire is joyful. It's jumping for joy. It's just happy. And also observe that she uses singular fire. So this tells us that the fire is maybe lonely. It's alone, right? But then it is happy. So it is not allowing its aloneness to impede its joy. So these are like deep explanations that we have, of the words that Smith uses in the second stanza here about how you can draw inspiration from nature and how to overcome melancholy. Now, moreover, the word lip tells that the single fire does not engross itself in thoughts of loneliness and aloneness. That's not what it does. But then it jumps happily in elation, in joy. Her words show that she wants her and the reader to take a cue. So let's draw inspiration from the personified fire and live a joyful life like the fires. One that is unmindful of whether they have company or not. So we should not be obsessed with whether we have company or we do not have company, whether we have friends or do not have friends, whether we are popular or not. No, like the fire, we should lip. And when we lip, by our lipping, we are indirectly telling the personified melancholy or melancholy for that matter to stay away from us because we are joyful. Hello, learner. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson so far. This is a sample video analysis of this poem. To access the full analysis, purchase it or the entire course with detailed analysis of all the 15 poems, the elements of literature in each poem, and IGCSE style questions, both passage-based and general. There are also A-star quality sample essays as well at mrquakersteaches.com. Find the links in the description. See you in class.